The Formula One circus has arrived in Canada, and we're about to witness several fascinating narratives develop before our eyes, beginning with the internal McLaren rivalry, Verstappen's pending penalty situation, and concluding with the major uncertainties surrounding Ferrari and Mercedes. What surprises does Canada hold in store for us, and even more critically, which drivers will face heightened pressure? The Canadian Grand Prix stands as one of the most captivating venues on the calendar for all the correct reasons. The unforgiving concrete barriers show no mercy for driver errors, while the extended straight section and twin chicane complex in corners 13 and 14 will provide the most appealing overtaking opportunities. However, the climate here in Montreal remains ever ready to complicate matters with a 30% probability of precipitation on Sunday. This element can never be dismissed considering the geographic location of this Canadian metropolis, and beyond that, you have several compelling storylines developing this season, beginning with Verstappen and his pending race penalty situation. The four-time world champion currently holds 11 of the 12 points required to trigger a race suspension, and Helmut Marko declared emphatically that Verstappen has been instructed to exercise caution in the next two race weekends. Upon reaching Austria, 2 of his penalty points will lapse, but given the competitive nature of the Drivers' Championship, Verstappen could find himself compelled to make a decision he absolutely despises, thereby increasing his risk of triggering the race suspension. This represents the moment where Red Bull must deliver their finest performance in Canada. They displayed certain confidence issues in Barcelona, and despite having no alternative options, the hard compound tire strategy became the initial catalyst for Verstappen's slide from 3rd position to 10th place by the race conclusion. The Dutch driver's frustration will undoubtedly manifest itself in Montreal as well, since he will be determined to close the gap to the McLaren drivers expeditiously. Indeed, he repeatedly claims this represents a season where his championship prospects are non-existent. But we must remember his exceptional performance in Montreal last season, when many predicted Norris would claim victory, yet Verstappen demonstrated repeatedly why he remains the master of wet weather and mixed track conditions. Therefore, our expectations remain exceptionally elevated regarding the ultimate equalizing factor. Conversely, we cannot overlook the continuing rivalry between the two McLaren drivers. Piastri and Norris are separated by 10 points in the drivers' standings, with the Australian holding the advantage, and the pressure continues mounting on Norris to eliminate this deficit and reclaim championship leadership, but the reality that Piastri now possesses more victories than him at McLaren might trouble him somewhat considering his team membership since 2019. Lando and Canada certainly have outstanding matters to resolve following his inaugural career victory in Miami. In Canada, the pit stop strategy worked completely against his interests. The timing benefited Verstappen, and he lacked the necessary pace to challenge the Dutchman, which now appears as a crucial turning point in the championship battle. Regarding the Woking-headquartered team, the drivers are free to settle their differences on track. Beyond Verstappen, no other driver presents themselves as a genuine championship threat, and barring any extraordinary developments, this trio will determine the season outcome. Canada represents another proving ground for these competitors, where Piastri enjoys fan support due to his demeanor, while Norris must overcome numerous criticisms directed at him from previous campaigns. We should also consider Mercedes in this equation. The Brackley-headquartered organization has developed an enhancement package for Canada following what they characterized as a disappointing weekend in Spain. Clearly, 2 mechanical retirements for Antonelli in Imola and Barcelona will not be easily forgotten by the team currently battling for 2nd position in the constructors' standings. Russell and his colleague will nonetheless receive a fresh opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities on significantly cooler asphalt in Montreal, which historically has favored Mercedes substantially. This advantage represents something James Allison expects the W16 to capitalize upon, and when discussing the favorable circumstances, the Mercedes technical director commented, "Well, the reduced temperatures in Montreal could work in our favor naturally if conditions are cooler, but I believe more significant than the actual temperature is simply the distinct character of the Montreal Challenge, a heavy braking venue, a track where achieving optimal front and rear axle temperatures relative to each other proves relatively challenging and represents a circuit where we have historically performed quite competently. Whether the Brackley-headquartered team can secure a podium result here in Montreal following a grueling triple-header sequence remains to be determined, but if this development concerns anyone, it would certainly be Verstappen. Somehow, the W16 has achieved parity with the RB21, yet still falls short of race-winning capability. These represent additional drivers who could potentially claim points from Max during his championship pursuit, but regardless of our preferences, we must examine the broader situation. It becomes an individual struggle. Well, Mercedes possesses two drivers they can depend upon to score significantly in 2025, which differs from Red Bull's situation. We will observe how this competition develops on Sunday, while examining what the team, currently second in the Constructors' Championship, has prepared. Leclerc's podium achievement in Spain elevated Ferrari's aspirations to duplicate this performance in Canada. However, the reduced temperatures and driver dissatisfaction with their vehicle will influence both championship battles. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton expresses complete dissatisfaction with his team's current trajectory. Eventually, he will pose the critical questions regarding when they will concentrate on 2026. Currently, a podium result would certainly revitalize Hamilton's competitive prospects for the remaining season, but the likelihood of achieving this through pure performance appears quite dim. Karun Chandok from Sky Formula One suggests the seven-time world champion's self-assurance has deteriorated significantly, and if he were associated with his garage, he would certainly worry about future developments. Expanding on this topic, Chandok stated the situation has become somewhat critical as we enter the season's second phase, and Hamilton cannot establish his rhythm. He cannot find the consistency where week after week he feels comfortable in the vehicle. If I were supporting Lewis, I would be troubled. We are approaching the year's midpoint and must determine whether this represents a fundamental problem. Being regularly outpaced by your teammate, even anticipated during your inaugural season adapting to Ferrari, does not benefit Hamilton's prospects with the Maranello-headquartered organization. Eventually, he might reach his breaking point and abandon any remaining seasonal opportunities while encouraging the team to prioritize 2026 and, most importantly, the revised regulations. This explains Canada's significance. This could represent one of the final opportunities for the team to restore Hamilton and Leclerc's optimism. The attention will certainly focus on other drivers here in Montreal as well. Let us examine what this weekend holds for the local favorite. Significant uncertainty remains regarding Lance Stroll's participation in Canada following his Spanish outburst, and the surgical procedure the team insists bears no relation to Saturday's incident. However, if he cannot drive due to post-surgical recovery, the Silverstone-headquartered squad faces two alternatives: youth and experience. Concerning youth, we have Felipe Drugovich, Aston Martin's reserve driver and former Formula 2 champion, who could provide the team valuable insight into his readiness for full race competition. Regarding experience and immediate point-scoring potential if circumstances align, we have Valtteri Bottas available. The Finnish driver could utilize this opportunity to enhance his prospects for securing a drive from 2026 forward prospects that were already promising before this Aston Martin possibility emerged. The team must decide their approach, but Lance Stroll's behavior must improve dramatically. Even if he competes in Canada, he cannot afford another mistake similar to Barcelona because influential figures will demand explanations. Aston Martin expects to contend for victories from 2026 onward, and if Lance continues his current behavior, serious pressure will mount for his replacement regardless of the favoritism surrounding the team. We must also address the Yuki Tsunoda situation. The Japanese driver faces enormous pressure following his Imola and Barcelona performances, particularly during qualifying sessions. Red Bull requires point scoring from their second vehicle as well, and Horner stated explicitly that failure to achieve this might compel them to seek alternative drivers as soon as 2026. Ricciardo currently holds twice Tsunoda's point total, and while he would welcome the chance to compete in the RB21, I question whether this would advance his career prospects. Nevertheless, should Verstappen face a race suspension, Ricciardo could receive the opportunity with Lawson also representing a viable candidate. Canada promises significant excitement, and we want to know which storyline you find most compelling this weekend. Share your thoughts in the comments section, and remember to click the next video appearing on your screen.